Rain poured down on Caroline's shoulders as she stood on the limestone steps. 8 months pregnant, one suitcase, a dead phone in her trembling hands. 30 seconds ago, her husband had said 2 words that ended 6 years of marriage. Get out. He did not even look up from his phone. His mother stood in the doorway, smiling. The locks had already been changed. Her credit cards canceled. Her car keys deactivated. She had nothing. No money, no shelter, no one to call. Or so he thought. What Garrett Winslow did not know was that his own grandmother had been watching for 3 years, documenting every affair, every hidden account, every cruel word, and tonight, as he celebrated his victory, with his 26-year-old mistress, 3 luxury vehicles were already pulling into his driveway: a black Mercedes, a silver Bentley, a white Range Rover. Inside those cars, lawyers, evidence, and a plan that would strip away everything he thought he owned. He threw his pregnant wife out with nothing. He had no idea that a convoy of justice was already waiting. Lesson in value. This story carries a powerful message for every woman who has ever felt trapped, underestimated, or alone. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. Sometimes the people who try to break you are actually setting you free. And sometimes the help you need is closer than you think. Remember this: you are never truly alone, and you are always enough. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is not worthy of you. Get out. 2 words. Garrett did not even look up from his phone when he said them. Caroline stood in the foyer of their home, her hand resting on her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant, 6 years of marriage, dismissed with 2 words. The Italian marble beneath her feet had never felt so cold. She had arranged the fresh flowers on the entry table that very morning. White roses, his favorite. Now they seemed to mock her. Garrett, I do not understand," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "What are you talking about?" He finally looked up. His eyes held nothing. No warmth, no recognition, no trace of the man who had promised to love her forever. "I said get out. You have 15 minutes to pack one bag. The locks have been changed. Your car keys no longer work. Your credit cards have been canceled." Caroline's heart pounded against her ribs. The baby kicked, sensing her distress. She pressed her palm against her stomach, trying to calm them both. "This is our home," she whispered. "We built this life together. You cannot just throw me out." Garrett laughed. The sound was ugly, cold. "Watch me." Movement in the doorway caught her attention. Helen Winslow stood there, arms crossed over her chest. Her mother-in-law, the woman who had smiled through their wedding, who had cried when they announced the pregnancy. Now she wore an expression of pure satisfaction. "You heard my son," Helen said. 15 minutes. I would start packing if I were you." Caroline looked between them. Mother and son, united against her, she searched their faces for some hint of humanity. Some crack in their armor? There was nothing. Why? The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. "At least tell me why." Garrett set down his phone. He walked toward her, slowly, deliberately, like a predator approaching wounded prey. "Because I can," he said. "Because I should have done this years ago. Because you were never anything more than a placeholder. And now your time is up." The words hit her like physical blows, each one landing harder than the last. She had loved this man, trusted him with everything, her heart, her future, her body. "The baby," she managed. "What about our baby?" Something flickered in his eyes, something dark and satisfied. "That is not my concern anymore." Helen stepped forward. She grabbed Caroline's arm with surprising strength for a woman in her 60s. 14 minutes now," she said. "I would hurry." Caroline found herself moving on autopilot. Her body knew what to do even though her mind had gone blank. She climbed the stairs to their bedroom. Her bedroom? No, his bedroom. It had never really been hers. She pulled a suitcase from the closet, the Louis Vuitton one Garrett had bought her for their honeymoon. She grabbed clothes without looking at them. Underwear, a few dresses, the comfortable pants she wore now that nothing else fit. Her hands shook as she moved to the bathroom. Toothbrush, prenatal vitamins, the stretch mark cream that probably did not work anyway. On the nightstand sat a photo of their wedding day. She looked so happy, so naive, so completely blind to who he really was. She left the photo where it was. 10 minutes, Helen called from downstairs. Carolyn moved faster. She grabbed her laptop, her charger, the baby book she had been filling out with names and dreams and hopes for the future. The nursery door stood open across the hall. She had spent 3 months decorating it. Pale yellow walls, a white crib with soft blankets, a mobile of tiny stars that played lullabies. She could not bring herself to look inside. The suitcase was heavy as she dragged it down the stairs. Each step felt like walking to her own execution. Garrett stood by the front door. His phone was back in his hand. He was already scrolling through messages, already forgetting she existed. "Time is up," he said without looking at her. Helen opened the front door. Late afternoon sunlight spilled across the marble floor. Beyond the threshold, the world waited. A world where she had nothing. No money, no car, no home, no husband. "Garrett, please." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. "I have nowhere to go. I am 8 months pregnant. At least let me stay until the baby comes." He did not answer. He did not even acknowledge she had spoken. Helen's hand pressed against her back, firm, insistent, pushing her toward the door. "Goodbye, Caroline," her mother-in-law said. "I wish I could say it has been a pleasure." And then she was outside. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. The lock clicked into place. Final. Irrevocable. Rain began to fall. Light at first, then heavier. The drops landed on her bare arms and soaked through her thin dress. She stood on the limestone steps with her single suitcase, one hand on her belly, watching the water pool around her feet. Through the window, she could see Garrett. He was laughing at something on his phone, already moved on, already erased her from his life. Caroline checked her phone. No signal, of course. He had canceled her service too. She pressed the power button anyway. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock, as if the device might somehow resurrect itself, as if this might all be a terrible dream. The rain fell harder. Her dress clung to her skin. The baby kicked again, restless, uncomfortable. "I know," she whispered. "I know, I am scared too." She did not know how long she stood there. Minutes, hours. Time had lost all meaning. The world had narrowed to this moment, this limestone step, this rain, this impossible reality. This was not supposed to happen. She had done everything right. She had been a good wife, a supportive partner. She had smiled at his friends and laughed at his jokes, and pretended not to notice when he came home, smelling like another woman's perfume. She had told herself it was nothing, that she was imagining things, that marriages went through rough patches, and they would get through this one too. She had been so stupid. The signs were all there. She had just refused to see them. Headlights cut through the rain. One car, then another, then a third. Caroline squinted through the downpour. A black Mercedes SUV led the convoy. Behind it, a silver Bentley, and behind that, a white Range Rover. They pulled into the circular driveway like a funeral procession in reverse. The SUV door opened. A woman stepped out, holding a large umbrella. It took Caroline a moment to recognize her through the rain. Meredith. her best friend from college. The one person she had not called because she did not want to burden anyone with her problems. Took him long enough, Meredith said. She walked toward Caroline with purpose, holding the umbrella high enough to shelter them both. Grandmother said he would do this by month 8. She was 2 weeks off. Caroline stared at her. The words did not make sense. None of this made sense. What, Meredith? How did you know? How are you here? Meredith took her suitcase with one hand and her elbow with the other. She guided Caroline toward the waiting SUV. Honey, get in the car. Vivian is waiting, and she has a lot to tell you. Vivian? Garrett's grandmother? The one and only. Meredith helped her into the back seat. Warm air enveloped her. Soft leather cradled her aching body. She has been planning for this moment for 3 years. Now buckle up. We have a lot of ground to cover. The convoy pulled away from the house. Through the rain-streaked window, Caroline watched her former life disappear. She saw Garrett's face in an upstairs window. His expression shifted from smug satisfaction to confusion, then concern. Good, she thought. Be confused. Be concerned. You have no idea what is coming. The Mercedes SUV smelled like expensive leather and fresh coffee. Heat poured from the vents, slowly thawing Caroline's frozen limbs. She sat in the back seat, dripping rainwater onto seats that probably cost more than her first car. Meredith handed her a warm towel, then a phone, then a thick folder. New phone, she said. New number, new everything. Vivian had it set up last week. Caroline took the items mechanically. Her brain still had not caught up with her circumstances. 20 minutes ago, she had been a pregnant wife with a comfortable life. Now she was riding in a luxury convoy toward an unknown destination, holding proof that someone had been watching her marriage collapse. I do not understand, she said. Her voice sounded hollow, distant, like it belonged to someone else. How did you know this would happen? How did any of you know? Meredith's expression softened. She had been Caroline's roommate at Georgetown. They had stayed up late, studying for finals and crying over breakups, and dreaming about their futures. Meredith had been maid of honor at her wedding. She had seen the doubts Caroline tried to hide. Vivian called me 3 months ago, Meredith said. She said to be ready, that Garrett would show his true colors before the baby came. She wanted people in place to catch you when you fell. But why? Vivian barely speaks to Garrett. I have only met her a handful of times. That is exactly why she noticed what the rest of us missed. She was watching from a distance, and she did not like what she saw. The convoy turned onto a private road. Trees lined both sides, their branches heavy with rain. In the fading light, they looked like skeletal hands reaching toward the sky. Where are we going? Caroline asked. The Ashford estate, Vivian's home, the original family money. Caroline knew the name. Everyone in their social circle knew the name. The Ashford fortune went back 5 generations. Old money, real money, the kind of wealth that shaped cities and influenced elections. Garrett had always resented his grandmother. He complained that she held the family fortune hostage, doling out allowances like a queen granting favors to peasants. He said she was controlling, manipulative, impossible to please. Now Caroline wondered if that was the only honest thing he had ever told her. The estate appeared through the rain like a vision from another century. A Georgian mansion sat at the end of a long driveway, its windows glowing with warm light. Manicured gardens stretched in every direction despite the weather. A fountain burbled in the center of the circular drive. The convoy stopped at the front entrance. A butler appeared with an umbrella before Caroline could even reach for the door handle. Welcome, Mrs. Winslow, he said. His voice was formal but kind. Mrs. Ashford is expecting you in the library. Caroline climbed out of the car. Her legs felt unsteady. The baby shifted, pressing against her bladder in a way that had become all too familiar in recent weeks. The front door opened before she reached it, and there stood Vivian Ashford. She was smaller than Caroline remembered, 77 years old, with silver hair, swept back from a face that bore the marks of time with dignity. She wore simple black pants and a cream-colored sweater. No jewelry, except for a thin gold band on her left hand, but her eyes were sharp as broken glass. They missed nothing. "My dear girl," Vivian said. She took Caroline's hands in hers. Her grip was surprisingly warm. "You must be exhausted. Let us get you warm and fed. Then we will discuss how we are going to destroy my grandson." The library was everything Caroline had imagined, and more. Dark wood paneling, shelves filled with leather-bound books, a fire crackling in a stone fireplace that looked older than the country itself. Vivian guided her to a chair near the flames. A maid appeared with tea and sandwiches. Another brought warm blankets. Within minutes, Caroline felt almost human again. Almost. "I owe you an explanation," Vivian said. She sat across from Caroline, her posture perfect despite her age. "And an apology." "An apology? For what?" "For not acting sooner." Vivian's voice carried a weight of regret. "I have known Garrett was a disappointment since he was 12 years old. Cruel to animals, cruel to servants. I hoped marriage might soften him. You almost did." Caroline felt tears prick her eyes. She had tried so hard, given so much, and in the end, it had meant nothing. "Then why did you not warn me?" she asked. "On my wedding day, before I made the biggest mistake of my life. Would you have believed me?" Vivian's question was gentle, but pointed. A bitter old woman speaking against her own grandchild? You would have thought I was trying to sabotage the wedding. Garrett would have used it to isolate you further. Caroline wanted to argue, but she knew Vivian was right. 6 years ago, she had been so in love, so certain that Garrett was her soulmate. She would not have listened to anyone who tried to tell her otherwise. "I am not crazy," she said softly. "You saw it too. Everything I suspected. Everything I tried to ignore." "My dear, I saw everything." Vivian leaned forward. "I have been documenting it for 3 years. The affairs, the financial manipulation, the prenuptial agreement he tricked you into signing." Caroline's stomach dropped. The prenup. She had almost forgotten about the prenup. Garrett had presented it 2 weeks before the wedding. He said it was just a formality, that his family's lawyers required it, that it did not mean he loved her any less. She had signed without reading it carefully, without getting her own lawyer. She had trusted him. "The prenup gives me nothing," she said. "I read it after we got married. If we divorce, I walk away with exactly what I brought to the marriage, which was nothing." Vivian smiled. It was the first genuine warmth Caroline had seen from her. "That prenup," she said slowly, "is void, signed under fraudulent pretenses, and the family trust, including the house he just threw you out of, does not belong to Garrett. It belongs to me, until I decide otherwise." She slid a folder across the table. The same folder Meredith had given her in the car. "Now, let me tell you about the convoy of lawyers arriving tomorrow, and why my grandson is about to lose everything he thinks he owns." Caroline opened the folder with trembling hands. Page after page of documentation, financial records, photographs, sworn statements, and at the very front, a summary written in Vivian's elegant handwriting. 3 years. 3 years of watching, waiting, gathering evidence. 3 years of planning for this exact moment. Caroline looked up at the old woman across from her, Vivian Ashford, the family matriarch, the keeper of secrets, her unexpected savior. Why? Caroline asked. Why go to all this trouble? I am nobody, just a girl from a middle-class family who married above her station. Vivianette's expression shifted. Something painful moved behind her eyes. Because I was you once, she said quietly, 50 years ago, and no one helped me. I had to fight alone. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to help another woman in my position, I would not hesitate. She reached across and took Caroline's hand again. You are not alone anymore, my dear. And together, we are going to make Garrett pay for every cruel thing he has ever done. The next morning arrived gray and wet. Rain continued to fall against the library windows as Caroline sat across from Bennett Crane, the private investigator Vivian had hired 3 years earlier. He was a plain-looking man, average height, average build, the kind of person you would pass on the street without a second glance, which, Caroline supposed, made him perfect for his job. Mrs. Winslow, he said. His voice was calm and professional. What I am about to show you will be difficult. I want you to be prepared, Caroline nodded. She had spent the night in the most comfortable guest room she had ever seen, but sleep had been impossible. Her mind kept replaying the moment Garrett had said those 2 words. Get out. The contempt in his voice, the satisfaction in his mother's eyes. I can handle it, she said. She hoped she was telling the truth. Bennett opened a laptop on the table between them, the screen filled with folders, dozens of them, organized by date and category. Let us start with the affairs, he said. He clicked on a folder labeled with a year. This first one began 18 months into your marriage. Caroline watched as photographs appeared on screen. Garrett at restaurants, Garrett at hotels, Garrett with women she had never seen before. 5 affairs that we documented, Bennett continued. There may have been more before I started watching. Tiffany Reeves is the most recent. She has been seeing your husband for approximately 8 months. 8 months, the same length of her pregnancy. He started cheating when I got pregnant, Caroline said. The realization settled into her bones like ice. Actually, he never stopped. Bennett clicked to another folder. He just became more careful after the first 2 years. Here are the financial records. More documents appeared. Bank statements, wire transfers, investment accounts. Your husband has been moving money into offshore accounts for 4 years, Bennett explained. Approximately $3.2 million hidden from marital assets. If you had divorced, under normal circumstances, you would have had no claim to any of it. Caroline stared at the numbers. $3 million. Stolen from their marriage. Hidden while he complained about her spending too much on nursery furniture. There is more, Bennett said. His voice grew heavier. This is where it becomes complicated. He clicked on another folder. Medical records. Caroline leaned forward. She recognized the letterhead. Her own doctor's office. Her own medical history. 4 years ago, Bennett said, your husband underwent a vasectomy at a private clinic in Switzerland. The procedure was successful. According to these records, he has been sterile ever since. The words did not make sense. They bounced around her skull like puzzle pieces that refused to fit together. That is impossible, she said. I am 8 months pregnant. The baby is his. Bennett was quiet for a long moment. He exchanged a glance with Vivian, who sat in the corner of the room, watching everything. Mrs. Winslow, he said carefully, the baby could not be his. He knew that. He planned for that. What are you talking about? Caroline's voice rose. I never cheated on my husband. I never even looked at another man. This baby was conceived in our marriage bed. Vivian moved to sit beside her. The old woman took her hand with unexpected tenderness. We know you were faithful, my dear. That is not in question. What is in question is what Garrett did without your knowledge. I do not understand. Dr. Susan Waverly appeared on a video call. Her face filled the corner of the laptop screen. She was Caroline's obstetrician, the woman who had guided her through this pregnancy from the very beginning. Caroline, Dr. Waverly said, I have been working with Mrs. Ashford to review your medical records, including records from a fertility procedure you underwent 18 months ago. Caroline's hand went to her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her distress. Fertility procedure? I never had a fertility procedure. The records say otherwise. Dr. Waverly's expression was pained. They show that you visited a specialized clinic that Garrett chose, that you underwent a treatment that used donor genetic material, without your knowledge or informed consent. The room began to spin. Caroline gripped the arm of her chair to keep from falling. That clinic, she whispered. He insisted on that specific place. He said they specialized in helping couples conceive. He said it was just routine testing. She remembered the appointment now, the sterile rooms, the kind nurses, Garrett holding her hand, telling her how much he wanted a baby, how much he wanted to start a family with her. She had felt so loved that day. The procedure used donor genetic material, Dr. Waverly continued. The baby you are carrying is not biologically related to your husband, but you did not know that. You could not have known. Why? Caroline's voice cracked. Why would he do this? Vivian's grip on her hand tightened. So he could claim you were unfaithful, she said. So he could use the baby as evidence against you. The prenup had an infidelity clause. If you cheated, you would lose everything, even your rights to the child. The full horror of it crashed over Caroline like a wave. Her pregnancy was not an accident. It was not a blessing. It was a weapon. Garrett had orchestrated the entire thing. He had violated her body and her trust so that he could destroy her later. I need a moment, Caroline managed. Please, I need to be alone. She found a bathroom down the hall, locked the door behind her, sank to the cold tile floor with her back against the wall, her hand pressed against her belly. This baby she had carried for 8 months, loved for 8 months, dreamed about for 8 months. This baby that was never supposed to be hers and Garrett's at all. She sat there for a long time, staring at her reflection in the cabinet mirror across the room, pregnant, betrayed, everything she thought she knew crumbling to dust. The baby kicked again, strong, insistent, demanding attention. And something shifted inside Caroline, something fundamental. It did not matter whose genetic material created this child. She had carried this baby, nurtured this baby, loved this baby, before she ever saw its face. Garrett might have orchestrated the pregnancy for his own cruel purposes, but the baby did not know that. The baby only knew the sound of her heartbeat and the warmth of her body. You are still mine, she whispered. Her voice echoed off the tile walls. You have always been mine. He does not get to take that. She stood up, washed her face, looked at herself in the mirror with new eyes. She was not a victim. She was a mother, and mothers protected their children. Caroline walked back to the library. Vivian and Bennett looked up as she entered. She saw concern in their faces, worry that she might have broken. She sat down in her chair, straightened her spine, met their eyes without flinching. Show me everything, she said. I want to know every single thing he has done. And then I want to know how we are going to make him pay. Douglas Pemberton arrived at the Ashford estate precisely at 9 the following morning. He was tall and silver-haired with the kind of gravitas that came from 40 years of practicing law at the highest levels. He served the Ashford family trust, not Garrett personally. His loyalty belonged to Vivian. Mrs. Winslow, he said as he shook her hand, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, but I promise you, We are going to make the best of a terrible situation. They gathered in Vivian's study, a smaller room than the library, but more functional. A long conference table dominated the space. Legal documents covered every surface. "Let me explain the landscape," Douglas said. He spread papers across the table, like a general preparing for battle. First, the prenuptial agreement. Garrett had you sign it under fraudulent pretenses. He misrepresented his assets and concealed his true intentions. The document is legally void. "What does that mean for me?" Carolyn asked. "It means you are entitled to an equitable share of marital assets. Despite what he told you, you did not forfeit your rights by signing that paper." Relief washed through her. Small comfort, given everything else, but comfort nonetheless. Second, the fertility fraud. Douglas's expression darkened. "What your husband did is criminal, using someone else's genetic material without consent, subjecting you to medical procedures under false pretenses. These are serious offenses. Could he go to prison? Potentially. The legal framework for reproductive fraud is still developing, but prosecutors have successfully brought charges in similar cases. At minimum, he faces significant civil liability." Caroline thought about Garrett in a prison jumpsuit. The image should have brought satisfaction. Instead, it just made her feel tired. "And the family trust?" Vivian asked. Her voice carried an edge of impatience. She already knew the answers to these questions. She wanted Caroline to hear them. Douglas nodded. "This is where your husband fundamentally miscalculated. He has spent his entire life acting like the family fortune belongs to him. It does not. The house, the cars, the accounts, everything flows through the Ashford Family Trust, which Vivian controls absolutely. So when he threw me out of that house," Caroline said slowly, "he threw me out of property he does not actually own." Precisely. And when Vivian revokes his access, which she can do at any time, he will have nothing. No home, no assets, nothing except what he has managed to hide offshore, which we know about, Bennett added from his corner of the room, and which will be disclosed during divorce proceedings. The weight of it all began to settle over Caroline. This was not just a divorce. It was a complete dismantling of Garrett's entire life. Everything he thought he possessed could be taken away, just like he had tried to take everything from her. After the meeting, Vivian asked everyone to give them the room. Douglas and Bennett filed out. The door closed with a soft click. The old woman turned to Caroline. In the privacy of this moment, her armor seemed to slip. She looked her age for the first time. "I need to apologize," Vivian said. "Properly, without an audience. You have already apologized." "No, I made excuses. I explained my reasoning. That is not the same thing." Vivian sat down heavily. "The truth is, I watched you suffer for years. I told myself I was gathering evidence, building a case. But part of me was waiting. Waiting for what? To see if you would fight back, to see if you deserved the help I could offer." The admission hung in the air between them. Caroline should have felt angry. This woman had watched her marriage crumble and done nothing, but she understood. In a way, she had done the same thing, watched the warning signs, and done nothing, hoped things would get better on their own. "I stayed because I thought it was my job to fix him," Caroline said. "Every problem, every betrayal, I told myself I could love him enough to make him change. I know, dear. That is what we are taught, that our love can transform the broken men in our lives. But some things cannot be fixed. Some people do not want to be fixed." Vivian's voice caught, the first crack in her armor Caroline had ever witnessed. "Garrett is his father's son, and his father destroyed me too, 40 years ago, before I learned to fight." Caroline leaned forward. "What happened?" "My husband, Garrett's grandfather, was a cruel man, charming in public, vicious in private. He controlled every aspect of my life for 15 years. The money, the social calendar, even what I wore. How did you get free? He died. Vivian's smile was thin. A heart attack at 52. The doctor said it was genetic. I have always wondered if his heart simply could not sustain that much hatred. I am sorry. Do not be. His death gave me everything. The trust, the power, the freedom to become who I was meant to be. She reached across and took Caroline's hand. I swore that no other woman would go through what I did. Not if I could prevent it. That afternoon, Meredith arrived for what she called a strategy session. Caroline met her in the sunroom, a bright space filled with plants and afternoon light. Tell me everything, Caroline said. How long have you been working with Vivians? Meredith had the grace to look uncomfortable. She reached out 3 months ago, but I had been keeping records longer than that. Records of what? Everything. Garrett's suspicious phone calls, his late nights at work that were not really work, the way he talked to you when he thought no one was watching. Why did you not tell me? Would you have listened? Meredith's question echoed Vivian's words from the night before. Every time I tried to say something, you defended him. You made excuses. I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, I would lose you entirely. Caroline wanted to argue, but she remembered those conversations, the way she had insisted everything was fine, the way she had gotten defensive whenever Meredith questioned Garrett's behavior. Remember your birthday dinner last year? Meredith asked. When he had that work emergency. Caroline nodded. Garrett had promised her a special night. Reservations at her favorite restaurant, a romantic evening, just the two of them. Then his phone had buzzed, and he had apologized profusely and said he had to go. I followed him, Meredith said. He went to a hotel downtown. Tiffany was waiting in the lobby. I have photographs. She handed over her phone. Caroline scrolled through the images. Garrett embracing a young blonde woman. Garrett leading her toward the elevators. Garrett looking happier than she had seen him in years. How many times? Caroline asked. How many special occasions did he ruin for someone else? Too many to count. Caroline handed the phone back. The anger was starting now. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Something slower and more dangerous. The kind of rage that sustained itself over months and years. The kind that could fuel a revolution. The morning sun crept through the curtains of a hotel room on the other side of the city. Garrett Winslow woke with a satisfied smile on his face. Tiffany lay beside him, her blonde hair spread across his pillow. Finally, after months of planning, he was free. No more pretending to care about Caroline's feelings. No more listening to her talk about the baby. No more playing the devoted husband. He reached for his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother. 7 text messages from friends. An email from Douglas Pemberton marked urgent. Garrett ignored them all. He had more important things to do, like celebrating his liberation. He ordered room service. Champagne and strawberries. The breakfast of victors. The food arrived 20 minutes later. Garrett signed the bill with a flourish. The waiter took his credit card and disappeared. 2 minutes later, there was another knock at the door. Sir? The waiter had returned, looking uncomfortable. I am afraid there is a problem with your card. It has been declined. Garrett laughed. That is impossible. Run it again. I tried 3 times, sir. The system says the account is closed. Closed? His account could not be closed. He had millions of dollars at his disposal. Unless grandmother. He threw on clothes and grabbed his phone, dialed his bank's private number, the one reserved for high net worth clients. Mr. Winslow, I am sorry, but your accounts have been frozen pending review, the banker said. We received instructions from the Ashford Family Trust this morning. That is ridiculous. Those are my accounts. The accounts are held in the name of the trust, sir. Mrs. Ashford has authority over all disbursements. I'm afraid there's nothing we can do. Garrett hung up and immediately dialed his grandmother's number. She answered on the first ring. Grandmother. He forced his voice to remain calm. There seems to be some confusion about my accounts. No confusion. Vivian's voice was ice. I have simply decided to exercise my rights as trustee. You cannot do this. That money is mine. Nothing has ever been yours, Garrett. Your father's allowance. Your grandfather's name, your wife's dignity. You have borrowed everything and owned nothing. Caroline is a whore. That baby is not mine. The words hung in the air. Garrett felt a moment of triumph. He had played his ace. Surely his grandmother would see now. Surely she would understand. We know, Vivian said calmly. We know exactly why it is not yours, and so will the police if you say another word. The line went dead. Garrett stared at his phone. His hands had started to shake. This was not how things were supposed to go. Caroline was supposed to be homeless and desperate. He was supposed to be free and victorious. How had everything gone so wrong, so quickly? Another knock at the hotel room door. Tiffany was in the shower, singing off key. Garrett crossed the room and yanked the door open. A man in a gray suit stood in the hallway. Average height, average build, forgettable face. Mr. Winslow, he said, my name is Bennett Crane. I work for your grandmother. She asked me to deliver this. He held out a manila folder. Garrett took it reflexively. What is this? Everything she has documented over the past 3 years. Consider it professional courtesy before the lawyers get involved. Bennett nodded once and walked away. His footsteps echoed on the hotel carpet until he rounded the corner and disappeared. Garrett closed the door. His fingers trembled as he opened the folder. Page after page of photographs. Bank statements, medical records, sworn statements from servants and drivers and personal assistants. His affairs, all 5 of them, documented in excruciating detail. His offshore accounts, every transfer traced and cataloged, his vasectomy, the fertility clinic, the entire scheme laid bare. And there, at the very back of the folder, a handwritten note in his grandmother's elegant script. You thought you were clever. You were merely cruel. There is a difference. His phone rang, his mother's number. Garrett? Helen's voice was strange, thin, distant. I just received a package from your grandmother. What did you do? Mother, I can explain. What did you do to that girl? For the first time in his life, his mother was not defending him, not making excuses, not smoothing things over. I did what I had to do, he said. She was going to take everything. She was going to give you a child, and you turned even that into a weapon. Helen's voice broke. I do not know you anymore. I am not sure I ever did. The line went dead. Second time in 5 minutes, someone had hung up on him. Tiffany emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel. She saw the folder in his hands, the papers scattered across the bed. What is that? She asked. Garrett did not answer. He was too busy watching his entire life fall apart. Caroline was in the sunroom when the butler announced an unexpected visitor. She looked up from the baby name book she had been studying to find Vivian standing in the doorway with a peculiar expression. There is someone here to see you, Vivian said. I think you should speak with her. Who? Tiffany Reeves. The name hit Caroline like a physical blow. The other woman, Garrett's mistress, the 26-year-old who had been sleeping with her husband for 8 months. What does she want? To talk? To apologize, I believe. Vivian's expression was unreadable. Shall I send her away? Caroline considered it. Every instinct screamed yes. Send her away. Do not give her the satisfaction of explaining herself. But something stopped her, some small voice that whispered there might be value in hearing what this woman had to say. No, Caroline said. Let her in. Tiffany Reeves was beautiful. Caroline had known that from the photographs, but seeing her in person made it worse somehow. Long blonde hair, perfect figure, the kind of youth and vitality that Caroline remembered having once, before 6 years with Garrett had worn her down. She stood in the doorway of the sunroom, looking terrified. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her hands twisted together in front of her. Thank you for seeing me, she said. Her voice trembled. You did not have to. No, Caroline agreed. I did not. Sit down. Tiffany sat in the chair across from her, the same chair where Vivian usually sat for their morning conversations. She looked smaller in it, younger, more vulnerable than Caroline had expected. He told me you were abusive, Tiffany blurted, that you trapped him, that the baby was some other man's and you were trying to steal his money. Caroline let the words settle. Let the absurdity of them sink in. And you believed him? I believed him completely. Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. He was so convincing, so sincere. He said you had psychological problems, that you were paranoid and controlling, that he was afraid of you. Afraid. Of me? I know how it sounds now. I know how stupid I was. The tears spilled over. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. This was the moment Caroline could rage, could punish, could release all the anger and hurt she had been carrying. Instead, she looked at Tiffany and saw something in her eyes that she recognized. A woman who had been manipulated. A woman who had believed lies because she wanted them to be true. A woman who was just beginning to realize how thoroughly she had been deceived. Did he tell you that you were the only one who understood him? Caroline asked. Tiffany nodded, tears streaming down her face. He says that to everyone. The words landed with devastating precision. Tiffany's composure shattered completely. She sobbed into her hands, her body shaking with the force of her grief. Caroline waited, let her cry, offered no comfort, but also no condemnation. Finally, Tiffany looked up. Her makeup was ruined. Her perfect facade had crumbled. I have information, she said. Things he said to me, things he thought were romantic, but were actually confessions. What kind of information? Tiffany reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Text messages, voicemails, months of them. She held out the device with shaking hands. He bragged about his plan, said the pregnancy was perfect, that he had set it up so you would never be able to claim anything. Caroline took the phone, scrolled through the messages. My wife is going to make me a very rich man, one text read, and she doesn't even know it. Another, the DNA won't match. I made sure of that. When the truth comes out, she'll lose everything. And another, you're the only one who understands me. The only one I've ever really loved. That last one was dated 6 weeks ago. The same phrase Garrett had used with Caroline on their wedding day. I thought he was being romantic, Tiffany said quietly, saying he would make sure we could be together. I did not understand what he was really saying. Caroline set the phone down carefully. Her hands wanted to throw it against the wall, to smash it into 1,000 pieces, to destroy this physical evidence of her husband's calculated cruelty. But evidence was evidence, and this evidence might help put Garrett exactly where he belonged. Why are you telling me this? Caroline asked. You could have deleted these messages, could have walked away, and pretended none of it happened. Because I was you once, Tiffany's voice dropped. Before Garrett. There was someone else. He did the same things, made me feel special, made me feel chosen. Then he destroyed me. She met Caroline's eyes, directly for the first time. I thought I had learned my lesson, but Garrett was so good at it, so practiced. He made me believe all over again. She took a shaky breath. I do not want to be the kind of person who helps men hurt other women, even by accident, even through stupidity. Caroline studied her for a long moment. 26 years old, the same age Caroline had been when she met Garrett. Young enough to start over, young enough to learn from this and build something better. Thank you, Caroline said finally, for the evidence and for the honesty. What will you do with it? Everything I can. That night, long after Tiffany had left, Caroline found herself unable to sleep. She walked the halls of the Ashford estate in the darkness, her footsteps silent on the ancient carpets. The nursery Vivian had prepared called to her. Yellow walls, pale as morning light, a white crib with soft blankets, a mobile of stars that sparkled in the moonlight through the window. She sat in the rocking chair, let it sway beneath her weight, pressed her hands against her belly, and felt her baby move. The question she had been avoiding surfaced in the darkness. Was any of it real? Did he ever love me? Or was I always just part of his plan? She thought about their courtship, the flowers, the romantic dinners, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. All of it a performance. All of it calculated to achieve a specific result. She thought about their wedding, the vows he spoke with such apparent sincerity, the tears in his eyes as she walked down the aisle, crocodile tears, empty promises, a contract signed in bad faith. She thought about the moments of tenderness, the times he held her after nightmares, the way he rubbed her feet when she was tired, the gentle way he touched her belly when the baby first started kicking. Those had felt real. But what did that mean? That he was capable of real emotion when it suited his purposes? Or that she had been so desperate for love that she invented tenderness where none existed? She did not know. She might never know. The grief came then. Deep and ugly and necessary. She cried for the marriage she thought she had, for the love that never existed, for the 6 years she had given to a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. She cried until there was nothing left, until her body ached and her eyes burned and her throat was raw from sobbing. And then, slowly, dawn light began to creep through the nursery windows. Her hand found her belly. The baby shifted beneath her palm. I am still here, she whispered. We are still here. She stood up, walked to the window, watched the sun rise over Vivian's gardens. She was done being a victim in someone else's story. It was time to write her own. Douglas Pemberton spread a stack of documents across the conference table. Each one represented a different front in the legal battle against Garrett Winslow. Divorce petition, he said, pointing to the first stack. Standard grounds of irreconcilable differences with additional claims for fraud and emotional abuse. Caroline nodded. The legal language felt sterile compared to the reality of her situation, but she understood the necessity. Criminal complaint for reproductive fraud. Douglas indicated the second stack. This one is complicated. The laws vary by state and the precedents are limited, but we have a strong case. What about the prenuptial agreement? Vivian asked from her seat at the head of the table. Void due to fraud. Garrett misrepresented his assets, concealed material information, and obtained her signature under false pretenses. Douglas almost smiled. His own cleverness is working against him. The more elaborate his scheme, the more evidence of fraudulent intent. And the trust? Caroline asked. I have already filed the paperwork to remove Garrett from the residence. Vivian has revoked his access to all trust assets, pending a full accounting. He is currently living in a hotel room paid for by his mother's personal funds. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Garrett reduced to living on his mother's charity, the same man who had thrown her out with nothing. But Caroline felt only exhaustion. The pregnancy was taking its toll. The stress was taking its toll. Everything was taking its toll. "There is one more option," Meredith said. She had been quiet through most of the meeting, but now she leaned forward. "The story could go public. Garrett's family is prominent. The press would be interested." Caroline looked at her friend. She saw the appeal. Front-page headlines exposing Garrett's cruelty. His face plastered across every gossip site. Public humiliation to match her private pain. "No," she said. "Are you sure? It would destroy him socially. It would also make my child's conception a matter of public record." Caroline's hand went to her belly. "Someday this baby will be old enough to search for her own story. I do not want that story to include tabloid coverage of her father's crimes." Vivian nodded approvingly. "A wise choice. My revenge does not have to be public. It just has to be complete." Douglas began gathering the papers. "I will file everything tomorrow. Garrett will receive service by the end of the week. Is there anything else we should discuss?" "The settlement offer," Bennett said. He had been standing in his usual corner, observing everything. Garrett's lawyer reached out this morning. "What kind of offer?" "Generous? Desperate." Bennett handed Douglas a document. "Everything she would be entitled to in court, plus a confidentiality agreement. He wants this to go away." Caroline took the paper. The numbers were substantial. More money than she had ever dreamed of having. Enough to never worry about finances again. "If you take this," Douglas said carefully, "you would agree not to discuss the case publicly. No criminal complaint, no civil suit, no mention of the fertility fraud. And if I refuse?" "The trial becomes public record. His crimes are documented for anyone to find, including any future women he might target." Caroline set the paper down. She thought about Tiffany, about the woman before her, about all the women who might come after. "My silence is not for sale," she said. "Even at that price. Are you certain? This is life-changing money. I will have life-changing money either way. The only question is whether I also have my integrity." She pushed the paper back toward Douglas. "Tell him I will see him in court, and I will say everything." The hospital stay happened 3 weeks before her due date. Stress had been building in her body for months. The confrontation with Garrett, the legal battles, the constant emotional strain. Her body finally rebelled. Contractions started at 2 in the morning, sharp and insistent, too early. Meredith drove, while Caroline breathed through the pain. The hospital was 20 minutes away. It felt like 20 hours. Dr. Waverly met them in the emergency room. Her face was calm, but her movements were quick. "We need to stop the contractions," she said. "The baby is healthy, but not quite ready. Your body is telling you something, Caroline." They gave her medication, monitored her vitals, kept her overnight for observation. By morning, the contractions had stopped. The baby was safe. But Dr. Waverly sat down with her for a serious conversation. "Your body is under extreme stress. The pregnancy is progressing normally, but you are pushing yourself too hard." She took Caroline's hand. "You need to step back from the legal battle, at least until the baby is born safely." "I cannot just abandon everything." "You are not abandoning anything. You are prioritizing." Dr. Waverly's eyes were kind but firm. "Vivian can handle the legal matters. Douglas can file the papers. Your only job right now is to take care of yourself and this baby." Caroline wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was fine, but her body had already made the argument for her. "My baby comes first," she said finally, "before revenge, before justice, before everything." She called Douglas from her hospital bed, told him to proceed without her active involvement. Vivian would make the decisions until the baby came. It felt like surrender, but it also felt like wisdom. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was step back and trust others to fight on your behalf. Garrett Winslow stood in the lobby of the Riverside Country Club and felt the world shifting beneath his feet. He had come here seeking allies. Surely his friends would support him. Surely they would see through Caroline's manipulation. Surely someone would be on his side. The first friend he approached was Bradley Mitchell. They had played golf together every Saturday for 12 years. Bradley saw him coming and turned away. "Brad," Garrett caught his arm. "Did you get my messages? I need to talk to you." Bradley looked at him with an expression Garrett had never seen before, something between disgust and pity. "I got your messages and a package from your grandmother." He pulled his arm free. "Do not contact me again, Garrett. I have daughters." The words hit like a slap. Garrett watched his oldest friend walk away without looking back. He tried others: Tom Reynolds, James Crawford, Peter Sinclair, men he had known for decades, men who had attended his wedding and celebrated his successes. Every one of them avoided his eyes, crossed to the other side of the room, suddenly had pressing engagements elsewhere. The evidence packets. Vivian had sent them everywhere. Pastor Richard Holloway entered the club lobby. The family minister, the man who had baptized Garrett as an infant and presided over his confirmation. Surely he would offer comfort. "Richard." Garrett intercepted him near the entrance. "Please, I need someone to talk to." The pastor studied him with sad eyes. "I have known you since you were a boy, Garrett. I watched you grow up, prayed for you, believed in your potential." "Then you know this is all a misunderstanding. Caroline is not who she pretends to be. I know exactly who Caroline is." Pastor Holloway's voice hardened. "She has attended my congregation for 6 years, volunteered with the homeless ministry, taught Sunday school, never once complained about her circumstances or spoke ill of you, despite everything. She was playing a role, positioning herself." "No, Garrett." The pastor shook his head. "You were playing a role, and now everyone can see what was behind the mask. Richard, please. I need guidance. You need consequences." The pastor stepped back. "You know what kind of man you are. That is exactly the problem." He walked past Garrett and into the club, but he paused at the door. "I will pray for you, but I will not defend you. The truth has a way of revealing itself. Yours has finally come to light." The conversation was witnessed by everyone, members pretending to read newspapers, staff pretending to arrange flowers, all of them watching the fall of Garrett Winslow. That evening, Helen arrived at the Ashford estate. She did not come as an enemy. She came as a broken woman seeking something she could not quite name. Carolyn received her in the sunroom, the same place where she had confronted Tiffany weeks before. "I spent 40 years protecting him," Helen said. Her voice was thin, exhausted. "Making excuses, smoothing over his mistakes. I told myself he was difficult but not evil, troubled but not cruel." "What changed?" "The photographs of you standing in the rain." Helen's eyes filled with tears. 8 months pregnant, alone, terrified. That was my son's handiwork. My grandchild's mother, treated like garbage. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. Garrett as a child, 8 or 9 years old, smiling at the camera with apparent innocence. "I have been asking myself when it started, when the cruelty took root." She stared at the picture. "I think it was always there. I just could not see it, because seeing it would have meant admitting I failed." "You did not fail," Caroline said. The word surprised her. "He made his own choices, but I enabled those choices. Every time I covered for him, every time I defended him, every time I told myself, boys will be boys or he will grow out of it." Helen looked up. "I am sorry for all of it, for being part of what hurt you." Caroline studied her mother-in-law. This woman she had resented for years. This woman who had stood in the doorway smiling as her son destroyed his marriage. She saw something different now. A mother who had loved her child too much and too blindly. A woman who was finally confronting the monster she had helped create. "I forgive you," Caroline said. Helen broke down completely. The carefully maintained composure shattered. She sobbed like a child. 40 years of denial crumbling at once. Caroline did not comfort her. That was not her job. But she did not condemn her either. Sometimes forgiveness was simply the refusal to carry someone else's burden any longer. Labor began at 3:27 on a Tuesday morning. Caroline woke to a gush of warm fluid and knew immediately what was happening. Vivian organized the convoy with military precision. Within 20 minutes, they were on the road to the hospital. "Breathe," Meredith said from the seat beside her. "Just breathe. You are going to be fine." Caroline breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The contractions came in waves, each one stronger than the last. The hospital appeared through the pre-dawn darkness. Dr. Waverly was waiting at the entrance. "3 weeks early, but she is ready," she said after a quick examination. "This baby wants to meet you." She. The word registered through the haze of pain. She was having a daughter. The labor room became a bubble of focused effort. Nurses moving efficiently. Monitors beeping steadily. Dr. Waverly's calm instructions guiding her through each contraction. Vivian sat in the corner, silent and watchful. Meredith held Caroline's hand through the worst of it. Tiffany had arrived somewhere during the night, taking her place in the vigil. 3 women who should have been enemies, united by circumstance and choice. Meanwhile, in a courthouse across the city, the civil hearing proceeded. Douglas had prepared for this moment. Garrett's lawyers had expected a settlement. Instead, they faced a full accounting of their client's crimes. Caroline's deposition played on a screen in the courtroom. Her voice was steady. Her facts were precise. She named each betrayal without flinching: the financial fraud, the hidden accounts, the prenuptial deception, the affairs, 5 women, 6 years of lies, the fertility fraud, the vasectomy, the clinic, the violation of her body, and her trust. Garrett sat at the defendant's table, watching his secrets become public record. His face grew paler with each revelation. His lawyers had advised him not to attend. He had insisted. He needed to confront his accuser. But his accuser was not there. She was in a hospital bed, bringing new life into the world. She had already said everything she needed to say. The judge listened to the full deposition without interruption. When it ended, she turned to Garrett's legal team. "Does the defendant wish to respond?" Garrett's lawyer rose. He had been paid handsomely to make the situation disappear. Now he understood that some situations could not be made to disappear. The defendant maintains his innocence and reserves the right to appeal. Noted. The judge turned to Douglas. "The court finds sufficient evidence of fraud in the prenuptial agreement. It is hereby declared void. Marital assets will be divided according to standard, equitable distribution guidelines. Additionally, the court finds sufficient evidence to support the plaintiff's claims of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages will be determined at a subsequent hearing." She looked directly at Garrett. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes were not. "Mr. Winslow, I strongly suggest you consider the weight of evidence against you. This court takes a dim view of calculated cruelty. Whatever civil remedies we impose will be nothing compared to the criminal charges you may face." The gavel fell. The hearing was adjourned. Back at the hospital, Caroline pushed through the final contractions with a strength she did not know she possessed. "One more," Dr. Waverly said. "One more and she is here." Caroline gathered everything she had left, every ounce of determination, every fragment of hope. She pushed. And then there was crying, not hers. A new voice in the world. Dr. Waverly placed the baby on her chest. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Perfect in every way. "Hello," Caroline whispered. "Hello, my darling. I have waited so long to meet you." The baby's eyes opened briefly. Dark blue, like all newborns. They would change color eventually, but for now they looked up at Caroline with something like recognition. This child she had carried for 8 months, loved for 8 months, defended through the worst crisis of her life. This child who was hers, completely and irrevocably hers. Meredith appeared at her bedside. Her eyes were wet. "She is beautiful, Carrie. Absolutely beautiful. I am going to call her Hope. Hope? Because that is what she is." Caroline pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead, proof that something beautiful can come from something terrible. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She glanced at the screen. A text from Douglas. Verdict in. You won. Everything. Caroline smiled and set the phone aside. She looked at Hope. At her daughter, at her future. "I already knew that," she whispered. "I already knew." 6 months later, Caroline stood on the porch of her farmhouse and watched the sun rise over the rolling hills. The house was not large. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. A kitchen with windows that looked out over a meadow where wildflowers bloomed in spring. She had bought it with her settlement money. Not the most expensive property she could have afforded, but the one that felt right, the one that felt like home. Hope slept in the nursery down the hall. At 6 months old, she was beginning to develop her own personality. Curious, alert, quick to smile when her mother entered the room. The baby monitor sat on the porch railing, its green light blinking steadily. Carolyn sipped her coffee and listened to the quiet sounds of her daughter breathing. This was her life now, simple, peaceful, hers. The gravel driveway crunched as a familiar car approached. Vivian emerged from the driver's seat of her Bentley, a basket in her hands. "I brought breakfast," she announced, "and some books for the baby." Sunday visits had become a tradition. Every week, Vivian made the 40-minute drive to the farmhouse. They would have breakfast together, take walks through the gardens, and talk about everything and nothing. "She is sleeping," Caroline said. "But she will be up soon. She has started recognizing your voice." Vivian's face softened in a way it rarely did for anyone else. "She is a remarkable child, strong, determined, like her mother." They went inside to prepare the meal. Vivian had brought fresh pastries and fruit. Carolyn made eggs and coffee. The kitchen filled with the comforting smells of a peaceful morning. "I have something to tell you," Vivian said as they sat down to eat. "I have changed my will." "Vivian, you do not need to do that." "I know I do not need to. I want to." The old woman set down her fork. "Hope is provided for, a trust in her name, with you as trustee until she turns 30. She will never have to worry about money or security. That is too generous." "It is not generous at all. It is exactly what I should have done years ago." Vivian reached across and took her hand. "Consider it my apology for not acting sooner, for watching you suffer and waiting too long to help." Caroline felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, from something else. Gratitude, maybe, or the overwhelming weight of being seen and valued. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, not just the money, for believing me, for fighting for me, for being the family I needed when my own turned against me." "You are my family now," Vivian said simply. "You and Hope, the only family that matters." They finished breakfast in companionable silence. Hope's cries came through the monitor, announcing her readiness to face the day. Caroline went to get her, while Vivian cleared the table. The nursery was bathed in morning light. Caroline lifted her daughter from the crib and held her close. Your great-grandmother is here," she whispered. "She brought you books, and more love than you could possibly use." Hope gurgled in response, her hands reaching for Caroline's face. This child, who had been conceived through deception, who had been intended as a weapon, who was supposed to destroy her mother's life. Instead, she had saved it. That afternoon, Caroline took a drive into town for groceries. The route took her past a familiar apartment building, small, nondescript. The kind of place where people lived when they had no other options. Garrett's building. She knew because Meredith had told her. He was living there now, working as an assistant at a financial firm that had not yet heard about his reputation. The country club had revoked his membership. His friends had stopped returning his calls. His mother maintained minimal contact out of obligation rather than love. For a moment, Caroline considered stopping, knocking on his door, looking into the eyes of the man who had tried to destroy her. She drove past without slowing down. He was not her concern anymore. He was not her story. She had spent 6 years trying to understand him, fix him, love him, into being a better person. She was done. The grocery store was quiet on a Sunday afternoon. Caroline pushed her cart through the aisles, selecting the simple ingredients of her new life: fresh vegetables, good bread, the formula Hope preferred. At the checkout, the cashier smiled at her. "Beautiful day, is it not?" "It really is," Caroline agreed, and she meant it. 1 year after the eviction, 1 year since Garrett had said those 2 words that changed everything. Get out. Caroline stood on her farmhouse porch in the rain, not hiding from it this time, just watching it fall. Her phone rang. Tiffany's name on the screen. "How are you?" Caroline asked. "Better. Therapy is helping." Tiffany's voice was stronger than it had been a year ago. "My therapist says I am making progress, learning to trust my own judgment again." "That is good. That is really good." They talked for a while about small things: Tiffany's new job, a book she was reading, the apartment she had found in a new city where no one knew her history. "Thank you," Tiffany said before hanging up, "for not hating me, for giving me a chance to make it right." "We all deserve second chances," Carolyn said, "even the ones who made terrible mistakes." The door opened behind her. Meredith stepped out, Hope balanced on her hip. "You are going to get soaked standing out here." "I know," Carolyn smiled. "I am just remembering." Remembering the woman who stood on limestone steps a year ago. Pregnant, abandoned, terrified, believing she had nothing and no one. She barely recognized that woman now, not because the anger was gone. It surfaced sometimes, late at night, the fury at being so thoroughly betrayed, the rage at the years she had wasted on someone who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. But the anger no longer defined her. It was part of her story, not the whole of it. Hope reached for her with chubby hands. Caroline took her daughter from Meredith and held her close. This child who had been created through betrayal, who had been born in the midst of battle, who had somehow emerged from all that darkness as a beacon of pure light. "You know what I tell her every night?" Caroline said to Meredith. "What?" She pressed her lips to Hope's forehead, breathed in the sweet baby smell, felt the warm weight of her daughter in her arms. "You are never alone, and you are always enough. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is not worthy of you." The rain continued to fall. She went inside. The door closed behind her. But this time, she was the one closing it. And on the other side, everything she needed was already there. Her daughter in her arms, her friend by her side, a home filled with peace and possibility, a future she had built from the wreckage of her past. The story of Caroline Winslow did not end with 2 words spoken by a cruel man in a marble foyer. It ended here, In a farmhouse in the hills, with rain on the windows and love in her heart, and a life that was finally completely her own. Not a victim, not a survivor, a woman who had walked through fire and emerged holding something precious. Hope. Always hope. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like to support our channel. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. We read every single one. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. You never know whose life you might change. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you powerful stories like this every week. Stories of strength, stories of survival, stories of hope. Now, let us begin. Closing credit. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience. Thank you for watching and for being part of our community.